Chosen one. Do not pass this moment by too quickly because something is shifting for you right now. What has felt stuck is not staying stuck. What is pressed against you is losing its grip. And what looked like a season of loss is about to reveal itself as the beginning of your restoration. There are moments in life when everything appears to lean the wrong way. Doors close without warning. Strength runs low. You try to move forward, but it feels like the ground keeps giving way beneath your feet. After a while, it can begin to seem as though the pressure is normal, as though disappointment is just your portion, as though delay and resistance are written into your name. But there are also moments when heaven interrupts that pattern. There are moments when what has been allowed for a season is suddenly brought to an end. Moments when the balance changes. Moments when what was used to weaken you begins to lose all authority over your life. This message begins there. I want you to picture a long table set in a place far beyond the reach of human noise. A place of final authority. A place where no lie survives and no injustice remains hidden forever. In that vision, everything that had been building against you was arranged neatly on one side. Every accusation, every delay, every humiliation, every unseen attack. It all looked organized, intentional, almost settled, and across from it sat the one who had lived under the weight of it all. You. It was the picture of a struggle that had gone on for longer than anyone around you fully understood. Not just one bad day, not just one disappointment, a pattern, a pressure, a season in which it seemed like the wrong things kept getting power and the right things kept getting pushed back. But then the atmosphere changed, not slowly, not gently, completely. The Lord stepped into the scene, and in a single act of authority, the arrangement was broken. What had looked stable was overturned. What had looked permanent was scattered. What had been lined up against you lost its place all at once, and the message carried in that moment was clear. The advantage of the enemy had ended. The season of everything working against you was not continuing. The order had been reversed. That is why you have felt this stirring in your spirit. That is why the old fear has not fit the way it used to. That is why, even in exhaustion, part of you has known something is about to change. Because when heaven declares a reversal, the natural world may lag behind for a moment, but it cannot cancel what has already been spoken. This is not about pretending the pain never happened. It happened. The losses were real. The waiting was real. The disappointment was real. But so is the turning point. So is the hand of God when it moves. So is the moment when a losing season comes to its end. And the first place this reversal begins is deep and personal. It begins with shame. There are wounds that come from failure. There are wounds that come from betrayal. And then there is the quiet burden of shame which can attach itself to almost anything. Sometimes it comes from what you did. Sometimes it comes from what was done to you. Sometimes it comes from words spoken over you so early and so often that you started treating them like truth. Shame as a way of shrinking a person from the inside. It teaches you to hide even when no one is chasing you. It makes you feel exposed in rooms where you should feel safe. It keeps replaying old moments long after God has already been willing to move you forward. And the dangerous thing about shame is that it does not always shout. Often it whispers. It tells you to stay small. It tells you not to try again. It tells you that if people really knew your story, they would step back. It tells you that your history disqualifies you from honor, from peace, from usefulness, from being seen with dignity again. But that voice has lied to you long enough, because what God does not merely remove, He often redeems. And what the enemy tried to brand as permanent disgrace, God knows how to transform into living proof of His mercy. The very places where you felt most broken are not beyond His reach. The chapters you wish you could erase are not wasted in His hands. He can touch the memory that once made you flinch and turn it into the very place where strength begins to speak. There are people who will one day find courage because you survived what almost buried you. There are people who will believe healing is possible because they hear your story and recognize their own pain inside it. There are rooms where your honesty will carry more authority than someone else's perfection ever could. That is how honor begins to grow where shame used to live. Not because the past is rewritten, but because its power over your identity is broken. The enemy wanted the memory of what happened to you to become a cage. God is making it into a doorway. The enemy wanted your lowest moments to define your value. God is lifting them into testimony. The enemy wanted you bowed down under the weight of old accusations. God is standing you back up with a different name over your life. You are not who shame said you were. You are not the sum of the worst thing you survived. You are not permanently marked by the season that hurt you most. You are not destined to live half-hidden, apologizing for existing, waiting for permission to walk in the light. There is honor coming back to places in you that have lived too long under insult. And when that shift begins, it may not always look dramatic at first. Sometimes it starts quietly. A new steadiness in your voice. A memory that no longer controls your breathing. A decision to stop introducing yourself through your wounds. A willingness to be seen without flinching. A peace you cannot explain because it did not come from circumstances. It came from God restoring what shame tried to steal. You will know this reversal is underway when the thing that used to make you feel diminished no longer has the same hold on you. When you stop seeing yourself through the eyes of the people who mishandled you, when your story begins to sound less like a sentence and more like survival touched by grace, that is the first turning. And from there, the reversal moves into another place that has tested you deeply. Lack, not just wanting more, not just wishing life were easier. Real lack, the kind that tightens your chest when responsibilities rise. The kind that makes simple needs feel heavy. The kind that forces you to measure everything, delay everything, stretch everything, and still wonder whether it will be enough. Lack wears on the soul. It is not only about money, though often it includes that. It is the exhausting feeling of never having margin, never having ease, never feeling like you can breathe without calculating the next demand. It can make you feel forgotten even while you are doing your best to remain faithful. And if it goes on long enough, it begins to create an inner expectation of disappointment. You stop asking boldly. You stop anticipating increase. You start preparing for shortage before anything even happens. You assume the answer will be no. You assume help will come late, if it comes at all. That is what prolonged lack does. It trains the heart to brace. But the heart was not made to live forever in survival mode. There comes a point when God interrupts that pattern too, because lack may have surrounded you, but it was never meant to become your identity. Scarcity may have tested you, but it does not get the final word over your life. The God who formed you is not limited by the channels that failed you. He is not confined by what did not come through, by what was delayed, by what was withheld, by what looked impossible on paper. He knows how to open supply where there appeared to be none. He knows how to restore what was drained. He knows how to bring provision in ways that leave no doubt it was his hand. Sometimes the first sign of this reversal is not abundance in your hands. It is abundance in your spirit. A breaking of the old fear, a loosening of that constant inward panic, a fresh ability to believe that you are not abandoned, not overlooked, not destined to struggle forever. Then the outer shift begins to follow. Openings where there were blocks, help from directions you did not expect, needs met with unusual timing, lost ground being recovered. What once slipped through your fingers beginning to stay, what used to vanish beginning to multiply, the strain that lived over your life beginning to lift. And when overflow starts to replace lack, it is not always only for your comfort. It is also for your restoration. It is God teaching your nervous system that it no longer has to live under the old pressure. It is God showing you that the season of barely enough does not own your future. It is God proving that He can do more than maintain you. He can establish you. So if your soul has been tired from scraping by, hear this clearly. The story is not ending in lack. The empty places are not permanent. The God who sustained you in little is fully able to surprise you with more than enough. And as the second reversal begins to unfold, another one is already waiting behind it. Because once shame starts losing its grip, And once lack begins to break, the hidden schemes that fed both of them cannot stay untouched forever. Something is about to be exposed, and what was set in motion against you is about to face a reversal of its own. And that is where the next turning begins, because not everything working against you came from open opposition. Some of it moved quietly, some of it hid behind smiles, behind timing, behind confusion, behind pressure that seemed to rise at the exact moment you were about to move forward. You have felt that before. Moments when progress should have come easily, yet somehow everything became complicated. Relationships shifted without explanation. Doors closed with strange precision. Plans unraveled in ways that felt almost deliberate. You tried to brush it off. You tried to stay calm. You tried to believe it was coincidence. But deep down, part of you knew there were forces that did not want to see you stand. Not everyone who smiled at you celebrated you. Not everyone who stayed near you carried clean intentions. Some people were comfortable only while you were struggling. They liked you better when you doubted yourself. They preferred your silence. They preferred your delay. They preferred the version of you that was too wounded to rise. And that is a painful thing to accept, because betrayal is easier to process when it comes from a distance. It is harder when it wears a familiar face, harder when the sabotage is subtle. Harder when the resistance blends into everyday life so completely that you begin questioning your own discernment. But what was hidden is not hidden from God. Nothing arranged in darkness stays untouched forever. No scheme remains invisible forever. No trap built for your downfall carries permanent authority just because it was laid in secret. There comes a moment when heaven no longer allows the strategy to continue unchallenged, and that moment brings justice. Not the kind rooted in bitterness. Not the kind that asks you to become consumed by revenge, but the kind that restores order. The kind that removes false power. The kind that causes the very thing designed to stop you to collapse under its own weight. What was prepared to trip you loses its force. What was formed to intimidate you turns fragile. What was meant to wear you down begins to expose the ones who built it. This is the reversal of hidden opposition. The turning of plans that were never supposed to prosper. The breaking of cycles that seemed strangely timed and carefully aimed. And when it happens, you may not need to announce it. You may simply watch as things begin to unravel without your interference. Truth starts surfacing. Motives become clearer. Pressure points weaken. People who once moved confidently against you begin stumbling over the very ground they prepared for someone else. There is a holy protection in that. A relief that comes when you realize you do not have to spend your life fighting every unseen battle with your bare hands. God knows how to defend what belongs to Him. He knows how to answer what you never even saw coming. He knows how to step between you and an agenda that hoped you would remain exhausted, distracted, and delayed. And once that kind of warfare begins to break, another reversal can finally move more freely into place. Because for some of you, the battle did not only touch your circumstances, it touched your body. There is a particular weariness that comes from fighting on the inside while trying to function on the outside. When your body carries pain, weakness, or unexplained symptoms, everything takes more effort. Simple tasks feel heavier. Hope gets tested in quiet ways. You want to be present, want to move, want to live fully, and yet something keeps interrupting the flow of your strength. Some of you have carried this privately for a long time. You learned how to keep going while hurting. You learned how to answer people with a calm voice while your body felt unpredictable. You learned how to survive seasons where energy disappeared too quickly, where peace was interrupted by symptoms, where even rest did not always restore what was drained. And there is grief in that. Grief over how much life has been shaped around managing pain. Grief over the plans adjusted, the moments missed, the parts of yourself that seemed harder to access because your body would not cooperate the way you needed it to. But your body is not forgotten. Your pain is not beneath the attention of God. Your weakness has not disqualified you from purpose, and the condition that has tried to introduce itself as permanent does not outrank the power of the one who made you. There are seasons when healing begins in ways the natural eye cannot measure right away. Peace enters before symptoms leave. Strength returns in small but undeniable waves. Sleep shifts. Breath deepens. Fear loosens. What used to dominate every thought stops ruling the whole inner world. And then, sometimes gradually and sometimes suddenly, the body starts responding to a deeper order. That is what this reversal carries. Not just relief, but restoration. Not just the easing of pain, but the rebuilding of strength. Not just the interruption of sickness, but the return of capacity. Your body was never meant to become a prison for your calling. The weakness that tried to define your days does not get to define your future. There is life in you that has not been exhausted. There is renewal in you that has not been canceled. There is strength God can awaken that medicine alone could never fully explain. And even now, something may already be shifting. A little more resilience than before. A little less fear attached to the symptom. A little more confidence that your body can respond to peace. A little more space between you and the thing that once felt all-consuming. Do not dismiss the small beginnings. God often begins healing with movements so quiet they could be overlooked by a distracted mind. But when you pay attention, you realize they are not small at all. They are signals. They are signs that the tide is changing. They are reminders that what attacked you does not own you. And as your body begins to come back into alignment, the next reversal becomes possible, because prolonged struggle does something else besides weaken the body. It clouds the mind. When you have been under pressure for too long, thought itself becomes heavy. Everything feels harder to sort through. Decisions lose their clarity. Discernment gets buried beneath noise. You second-guess what once felt obvious. You hesitate where you should move. You overanalyze because you are afraid one wrong step will cost too much. Confusion is exhausting in its own way. It does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like mental fog, a scattered focus, a deep uncertainty around choices that should not feel this difficult. It looks like standing at a crossroads and somehow feeling unable to trust yourself. It looks like replaying conversations, options, fears, and possibilities until you are too drained to do anything at all. And the enemy loves that state. Because confusion slows movement without needing chains. It steals momentum without touching your hands. It keeps people still while making them believe they are being careful. It turns hesitation into habit. It makes mistiming look reasonable. It surrounds a person with so much inner noise that they can barely hear the voice of peace. But God does not lead through chaos. When He brings direction, there is steadiness in it. There is order in it. There is a clean kind of knowing that does not need panic to feel urgent. And when the reversal of confusion begins, it often feels like waking up after a long mental storm. The same situation is still in front of you, but now you can see it. The same choice remains, but now the path is clearer. The same life is yours, but now the fog is thinning. What once felt tangled begins to separate. What once felt impossible to discern starts becoming obvious. The lie loses volume. Peace gains authority. Your thoughts stop circling and start landing. The part of you that has been mentally scattered begins to gather itself again. That is not a small miracle. To think clearly again is a form of restoration. To sense direction again is a form of mercy. To feel peace return to your decision-making is a sign that something holy is taking place in the inner room of your life. And this clarity is not arriving just so you can feel better. It is arriving because the next steps matter. There are decisions ahead that require a settled spirit. There are doors ahead that require discernment. There are connections, opportunities, and assignments that you must be able to recognize without the old fog distorting them. So let this settle in your heart. The plans against you are not surviving. The weakness in your body is not the end of your story. The confusion in your mind is lifting. You are moving out of hidden warfare, out of draining affliction, out of mental fog, and you are not doing it in fragments. These reversals are connected. One opens the way for the next. Justice makes room for healing. Healing makes room for clarity. And clarity prepares you for what is still to come. Because once your mind begins to clear, you start seeing something else more honestly. You start seeing how rejection shaped parts of your life you barely noticed before. And that too is about to change. Because once the fog begins to lift, you start noticing just how many of your choices were shaped by the fear of not being wanted, not being welcomed, not being chosen. Rejection has a way of leaving fingerprints on a life. It can change how you enter rooms, how much of yourself you reveal, how quickly you assume someone will leave, how often you brace for disappointment before anything has even happened. For some people, rejection came early. It settled into the heart before they had language for it. For others, it arrived later through betrayal, exclusion, abandonment, or being overlooked in places where they should have been valued. However it came, it carried the same message. You do not belong. You are too much or not enough. There is no place being kept for you. And after hearing that message enough times, a person can begin to cooperate with it without realizing it. You pull back first. You stay guarded. You expect less. You hide the tender parts of yourself. You learn how to appear fine while quietly preparing for the next door to close. That kind of pain creates isolation long before a person is physically alone. But rejection is not a final identity. It is an injury. And injuries can heal. There is a reversal for the one who has felt left out, passed over, unseen, and emotionally stranded. There is a turning for the one who got used to being the extra, the outsider, the one who never seemed to arrive at the right place at the right time. God knows how to bring belonging back to a life that has known exclusion for too long. And when that reversal begins, it often arrives with surprise. The people who did not know your value no longer define your worth. The spaces that had no room for you lose their importance. New connections begin to appear with less striving. You are seen without forcing yourself to be seen. You are welcomed without performing for it. You begin to recognize that acceptance rooted in God feels different from acceptance built on human mood. It is steadier, cleaner, less anxious. It does not beg. It does not chase. It receives. Then slowly, or sometimes all at once, life starts reflecting that inner shift. Relationships become healthier. The right people recognize you. The right spaces make room. Opportunities that once felt locked begin to open. Not every person will understand you, and not every room will be yours, but the ache of constant exclusion begins to lose its grip because you are no longer living from the wound. You are living from acceptance, and that changes how you walk. It changes how you pray, how you love, how you wait, how you choose. It changes the way you carry your own presence. It even changes what you are willing to believe is possible. Because once rejection stops narrating your life, you become capable of stepping into what delay had been trying to keep from you. And that brings us to the final reversal, delay. There are few things more wearing than feeling ready in one area of your life and stuck in another. You know what you carry. You know what has been promised in your spirit. You know there is more ahead. Yet somehow the timeline keeps stretching. The answers come slowly. The doors remain shut. The progress that should have happened years ago still feels just out of reach. Delay can make a person question everything. It can make you wonder whether you heard wrong, whether you waited too long, whether your moment quietly passed while you were trying to stay faithful. It can be especially painful when you watch others move ahead with ease while you are still standing in the same unresolved chapter. But not every delay is denial, and not every slow season is empty. Sometimes there has been real resistance, real theft, real interference, time that seemed to slip away under pressure, disappointment, fear, confusion, or exhaustion. And when heaven brings reversal, it does not only heal emotions, it also addresses lost time. That is why this final turning carries such force. It is the reversal of stolen years, the compression of what lingered too long, the acceleration of what seemed permanently postponed. When God moves in this way, things do not always unfold by ordinary pacing. What felt impossible to shift begins moving quickly. Answers arrive closer together. Connections form faster. Doors that had resisted for years open within a short span of time. What once required endless effort begins to carry unusual favor. You find yourself stepping into spaces you thought would take another decade to reach. It can feel almost disorienting at first, because your inner world has been trained by waiting. Part of you still expects slowness, Part of you still prepares for postponement, but this reversal asks you to make room for a new rhythm, to believe that God is not only able to restore what was lost, but able to move with such precision that wasted time no longer gets the final word. There are seasons in which one yes changes 5 years. One connection changes 10. One act of obedience unlocks what months of striving never could. That is the kind of acceleration now standing at the edge of this message. Not frantic motion, not rushed confusion, holy momentum, the kind that comes when the wrong weight has been lifted, when shame has lost its claim, when lack has started breaking, when hidden opposition has weakened, when healing has begun, when clarity has returned, when rejection no longer defines you. All of it builds toward this, a life that begins to move again. So now, before this closes, take a breath and let these reversals settle inside you. What brought humiliation is turning into honor. What drained you is turning into provision. What rose against you is collapsing under its own scheme. What burdened your body is giving way to renewal. What clouded your mind is yielding to clarity. What isolated you is giving way to belonging. What delayed you is turning into acceleration. Even if your circumstances have not caught up yet, do not mistake quiet beginnings for absence. Many things shift in the spirit before they become undeniable in the natural. You may still be standing in the same room tonight, but that does not mean you are standing in the same season. Something has already changed, so say this in your heart as a real response, not empty repetition. Father, I receive the turning you are bringing into my life. I release the shame I was never meant to carry. I release the fear of lack. I release every agreement with confusion, rejection, delay, and defeat. I receive your honor, your provision, your protection, your healing, your clarity, your acceptance, and your timing. Teach me how to walk like what you have spoken is true, even before everything becomes visible. Steady my heart, strengthen my faith, and let every reversal you have begun come fully to life in the days ahead. Amen. Hold on to that, and over the next few days, be careful what you agree with. Do not let old evidence talk you out of new truth. Do not let familiar discouragement convince you that nothing is moving. The enemy will always try to preserve an old story when God is writing a new one. But you do not have to return to the language of defeat. You do not have to bow again to what is already breaking. Stay close to what strengthens your spirit, and if this message met you at the right time, take a moment to honor that. Leave a like as your quiet sign of agreement. Write in the comments, "Everything is turning in my favor," so your own eyes can see the declaration, and subscribe to Archangel Michael Message so you can keep walking with these messages as the next steps unfold. Then send this to someone whose heart has been fighting to hold on, someone who has been carrying too much for too long, someone who needs to hear that the story is not over at the point of pain. You are not leaving this moment the way you entered it. What is pressed against you is losing ground. What has been delayed is beginning to move, and what once looked like the end is becoming the place where restoration starts. The tables have turned. Now walk forward like it